Good morning, Chris.
Morning, man.
It's been a while since we chatted.
Yeah, you know what though? The Harmony lunch was awesome.
Yeah, I was just about to say that last week you came down. You came down on Thursday,
Yep.
and we had a fun time jumping from restaurant to restaurant and chatting, which was really cool. And then Friday and Saturday we couldn't make the podcast happen, and then this week we were supposed to go on Friday. And today's Sunday it's Sunday today, right?
It
Holy
is.
cow, I'm totally lost.
Yeah, it is Sunday.
So we couldn't make Friday work. Saturday wasn't an option. It's like life just came and kicked us in the butt and said, you guys are not talking until I want you to.
Yeah. And lots of good reasons. Lots of good reasons. I go back to our reasoning in trying to do this podcast is that, reflective practice is awesome as long as it dances with your real life challenges. So, I think one truth is that the living that happens between our conversations kind of creeps back in. So all it means is I guess in some ways you feel like you got more stuff to talk about. On the other hand, sometimes it can make the conversations more distracting. That, it's really easy to have focused conversations, I guess, if you're chatting every 3 or 4 days, right? There's shorter stretches of stuff that can get in there. But 2 weeks, I'm trying to think back if there was something last week that I thought, I want to talk to him about this. And I should have wrote it down. I should have made a note. And then life jumped in and, I can say my car kind of needed surgery twice. And that got expensive and that became distracting. And then I'm sure there was something within there because that stuff I kind of shared in between. So you got some of the reflective practice along the way, thus some of the texts with a few swear words that I had in it. But I'm trying to think of topically what was some of the stuff that here's something, and I don't know how deep we'll go into this. Here's something that I was thinking a lot about. You've spoken in the past about in using social media. Can I jump in? Can I zig? Can I
zig and zag, buddy?
Zig and zag. Okay. So you've spoken in the past about the way that you kind of like your operating system for using social media, and you hold to the kind of the rule that if someone follows you, you follow them. And I'm curious because I was sort of informed, I guess, educated that there's an emotional kind of reaction to having someone follow or not follow you, which I'm not going to say, sure. I mean, I guess if you feel like someone follows you, you're in your mind, you're like, oh, cool. There's another person that I'm kind of connected to. Maybe for some people, they actually go deeper in the analytics and they're like, that's one more person I can market to. Some people be like, I don't care. Like I'm sort of just, I'm broadcasting. Someone wants to pick it up. Someone wants to pick it up. But it was brought to mind that once you follow someone, that for some people, they sort of expect you to consistently stay following them. Like you shouldn't necessarily jump in and out of following somebody. Now, I'll say flat out, I do that. Using Twitter, there isn't a function in there, which I've used in Facebook before, and I think Insta has this as well, where you can stay connected to someone, but you mute the person. So you no longer have their stuff coming up on your feed, but when you want to turn it back on, so you as the user are able to control the feed that comes to you. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate it's probably singularly a function that I wish Twitter would adopt. that you don't have to unfriend essentially a person in order to keep their feed out of your face. So it's not that I get stressed over seeing people's feeds constantly in my timeline. It's more I like to sort of be able to focus what I'm actually reading. And there's sometimes where I just don't I don't care about mathematics, or I don't care about coding, or I don't care about equity. It's not what my focus is. I'm kind of going in and I want to be able to, with the same certainty that if you went to a shelf of encyclopedia, and I don't even know how long time ago I've done that, but you can go up and you say, there's the EI volume to EZ volume. And you can pull that out and you can sort of have a focus moment of actually searching through and finding the thing that you're looking for. So it was brought to mind this week that my habits of following and unfollowing, it's actually within, I guess I say this week, but within the last 2 weeks, that causes stress for some people, that actually potentially creates a dynamic of maybe, I don't know, I'm projecting some confusion or emotional. Yeah, I guess emotional. I don't know. It creates dissonance. And it's funny because it sort of challenges me. Like, I question whether or not I should just change my behavior. Should I just let it roll? Or should I keep doing what I'm doing? What it really comes back to is I feel like there's a function missing from Twitter to be able to mute someone until to sort of be, and I know there is there's that mute button in there. I got that. There is for some of the things, I think. But I also still believe that did I completely go in the wrong direction? Is there an actual you can mute someone completely? I got to check that now.
I don't know. You should check it when I ramble on.
No, I won't do that.
Maybe this is the perfect place for me to jump in.
Do it.
A couple of things that are really interesting to me. One is that lately I've been finding myself catching people who, not catching, but like as I'm going through my Twitter feed, I'll see someone who's following me and then I'll feel bad for them. And I mean that in that because I tweet a lot and some of it is nonsense and some of it is legit. And so then I feel like, oh, they're going to see all my nonsense. But then I'm like, well, maybe they should unfollow me. Like there are some people that I think they're on Twitter and I follow them, but maybe they shouldn't follow me because I do zig and zag on Twitter. It's not all business. It's business, it's pleasure. It's the in-between. There's a lot going on there. Now the following and unfollowing thing. Here's I agree with you. There should be a button.
There is.
Okay, because here's the thing. I agree with you. Some days I want to hear more about maker spaces, and other days maybe I don't. And so there are some people that are very good about tweeting. 80% of their feed is about what they do or they're marketing their stuff or whatever. Sometimes I don't want to see that. Sometimes it's just too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you that we should be able to shut that stuff off. I don't necessarily want to unfollow people, but and I usually don't. I either rant to you about the nonsense I read or I just flip through it and keep going.
Now, let me throw in here. There is, and I didn't even realize it. There is a mute. There is a mute in Twitter, and part of it is I'm checking my whole. I'm redacting. I'm redacting as I said it. There is a mute. There is a mute. So on my end, my bad. I can mute someone, and it doesn't matter if you are following or not following. So there we go. I learned myself something.
Good, and I learned something too. And from that, now maybe you might stop this unfollowing business because, as you said, it does stress people out. Now, here's the flip side to that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can easily let people know that that's what you do. You can either put it in your, if you so choose to, you can put it in your Twitter profile, or you can write a tweet and pin it that says, "Hey, this is what I'm here for." And now, maybe you don't have to do that anymore because you found the mute button, but you could have said, I might follow you this week and unfollow you next week. depending on what I'm looking to gain in terms of my PD or my reflection. And that's going to shift as time goes on, as my practice moves in different directions. But I mean, now you don't need to do that.
You know what's funny is that the habit was still entirely based out of me just not wanting the feed. Do you know what I mean? Like it's funny, and now I can see how if that follow unfollow, I can see how it would be noticeable because everyone gets that in the notifications, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that I know better, then I'll use the mute. Absolutely. Unless I'm just looking to sort of, I guess, break the relationship. Like I'm not going there anymore. What would be interesting, I don't know this, whether or not, I don't think, does the person get a notification that they've been muted?
I don't know. You should mute me and I'll let you know.
Do you think they should?
No.
Why not?
Because that's just going to cause a potentially negative situation.
If we're using any real
dude, if you know people who are losing their minds because you keep unfollowing and following them, what do you think is going to happen when they get a notification that Chris Clough just muted them for the 8th time in this month? They're going to lose their mind. If they're losing their mind over following and unfollowing, why do I need to know that you've muted me?
Well, because maybe what's the other button? What's the button? And it doesn't have to be a button. I guess what is the mechanism of just if someone in your feed is on a like they're just spinning and you're sort of done with kind of listening to whatever it is they're spewing your way. There's no unlike button, right? I guess you can post a comment back and say, I didn't really like what you posted. Please cease and desist. And then you can block the person, right? You can sort of close them out and they know they've been blocked. It's just interesting. Why is it that someone shouldn't also be told that they've been muted? And it's become now, it's now suddenly a fascination to me. Why wouldn't we tell people that they've been muted if it's if we're going to say we like, there's no dislike, there's an absolute block, so you can leave altogether. Yeah.
Well, the answer to that question is because people don't want to. It seems like Twitter is built for positive, not for negative. They don't want
content notwithstanding. There's a whole lot of people that would counter that and kind of go
thing, but like they don't have a dislike button. They don't notify you when you are. They don't notify people when you unfollow them. They don't notify people when you block them either. So they don't want to go there.
I've wondered something similarly around, Facebook. I have just because does someone get a notification? Because I guess the way that I look at it in some ways is it's funny how these tools are based on, I think they try and create digital parallels to real life social interactions. And I think that's what makes it both addictive and sometimes provocative and titillating. If you and I were sitting in the same space, so for example, coming to when we went out for dinner. So we've chosen to be in the same dinners, I should say. If we've chosen to hang out in a certain space and one of us is saying something that the other might disagrees with, you have the choice to comment. I'm going to use the language of Twitter. You have the choice to comment. If you agree, whatever, you can choose to interact. You can have a conversation, aka comment. If you find it provocative enough and interesting enough, the conversation, you might share it or retweet it. You might push it out to somebody at home. And this happened a couple of times where we were hanging out. We said sort of texts to our spouses. You could also say to the person, I'd rather not talk about that. So you could sort of do some pushback. And really, though it would be, hopefully we would have a conversation about it, we could choose to say, you know what, I'm going to block you, which would be the equivalent of one of us saying, I got to go home now. I'm kind of done hanging out with you. So it's interesting to me that we have these sort of, that it's not in where we decide to sort of make connections real and not real with digital tools. And I would say that I think that I would like to believe that being told you've been muted would be, I like the idea. I would like to know if I've been muted.
Okay.
Would you?
Um, I guess it would,
Excuse
you
me.
know what, for me, I guess it would depend on the day.
Mhm.
Like,
In what way?
well,
Excuse me.
for example, there are some people that follow me, that currently follow me on Twitter, that I kind of feel bad for, because I'm like, oh, that person has to listen to me, you know, that person has to listen to me talk politics, or that person has to see me give like one of those laughing, crying emojis, when something happens on the Blue Jays game, right? Like, so in some situations, it's like, I would want to nudge them and say, go ahead and mute me, and then maybe like if you know that I'm going to be at a committee meeting on Thursday, unmute me because you're going to get some information about innovation or something. I don't know. And then there's other times where I'm sure that if I was muted by certain people, I would feel sad. Like I'd be like, oh, that person doesn't want to hear me talk. So, I mean, it is the way it is, and I think that if people were notified they're being muted, then I think people might use the tool differently. So right now you can mute people and they won't know. You can block people and they won't know. You can unfollow people and they won't know. They won't be notified. And what I think is that if people were notified, I think it would be used a lot differently. I think people would think before they did it. I think every time you have to know what the repercussions are going to be from your actions, and then you change the way you operate. I think that's just human nature. So if, like, for example, well, I've talked to you about, there are people on Twitter that are just killing me these days. They just keep popping up in my feed, and I don't want to see it anymore. And maybe I will mute them now that I know that that's a possibility. I
Is
wasn't
that kind of remarkable? Like, I'll say it's remarkable. Like, I didn't know that. I'm kind of mind blown because I knew that you could mute a conversation, and I do that often. When I see like a broad based, hey, everyone in the pool kind of a thing, so I leave myself open to being tagged, which I'm cool with. My DMs are open, but I would say two or three times a week, I'm muting conversations that I've been tagged into, just so it's not popping up. Sorry, I just find it remarkable that I did not realize that I could just mute a person.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a little bit I'm sad that I didn't know that, but it's good that now we know, and it's
Mhm.
come from, real life situation about trying to figure out how this thing works and how to eliminate some of the noise that we see and experience on Twitter that we don't want to. And then the people who are listening to us, this might be new to them too,
Yep.
and they may decide to go ahead and use the feature. Um,
Against me.
well, whatever. I
Yeah,
mean,
I know.
that's just the way it goes. Um, is there anything else you wanted to say about that? The social media etiquette?
I'm still trying to. I actually want to. I want to know more. I don't know what it is exactly that I want to know, but I want to know more about that emotional impact of following and unfollowing. Like, I think there's something. I don't know if I want to make it about. It's a I don't know. I can't say for sure if this is about how we connect with people versus how we connect with people in digital versus in real life interactions. Um, it makes me mindful of paying attention in real life to how I acknowledge and respond to people, I guess. Because if I'm pointing out, it would be handy to be able to offer someone that feedback that I've muted you. I'm thinking about the parallel of like, what would I do in real life if I was in a conversation with someone, and what would be the reasoning that I would want to stop listening per se, or that I would want to comment or to direct the person, like actually share with them that I'm no longer listening to you. Like, it's sort of, I'm trying to run the parallels here. Because if I'm sort of asking for that simplistic single click, one click tool, if I were to send someone a message, if someone would receive a message from a one click tool that I've muted you, would I feel still the kind of like that human obligation to explain while I'm muting you? And if I was going to provide a rationale for why I muted you, why didn't I just send that in a comment in the first place instead of the one click tool? So there's a counter argument to hear about the single click tools are slightly dehumanizing. If everything you were forced to actually provide a comment instead, like you mentioned, that could also change how we use social media. There's some things that have been introduced via social media that there is no sort of clean parallel in one-to-one connection. Like some of the shortcuts, the whole concept of, desktop shortcuts has kind of bled over to relationship shortcuts, point and click things with social media. So, all right, mute.
I did something early this week, late last week, and last weekend or something. I watched the Brene Brown Netflix special called "The Call to Courage," and I decided I was a little bit familiar with Brene Brown. She's a researcher, and she researches shame and vulnerability. That's kind of her shtick. And she's written some books, and I'm familiar with like her name and a little bit about what she's done, but I've never really gone deep. And so I saw on Twitter that people were posting that she had a Netflix, like 1 hour thing where she's on stage and she's talking, kind of like a big TEDx talk. And I thought to myself, it was really cool when I had that moment where I was like, I'm going to watch it and I'm going to tweet out as I'm watching it. I'm going to live tweet my watching of this show. And it was really cool experience. First of all, I didn't think it'd be on Netflix Canada, but then I saw Canadian educators tweeting about it. I'm like, what? And then I went on Netflix and I'm like, there it is. It's popped up there. And you know what? There's something about the lady that I like. Like, there's something about her that I like. Maybe it's the topic. Maybe it's hard to stand up in front of anybody and talk about weakness, right? I mean, from my perspective, that's hard. It's a hard thing to do. And for you to research it and then talk about it and actually like apply what you've learned to who you are, and to be able to talk about that, that's huge. Because so as I was listening to her and I was tweeting out bits and pieces that resonated with me, I was making wicked connections. Like, I was making connections to the empathy engines, what you and I have talked about in terms of like using technology to help us navigate human relationships a little bit better. I was making connections to people like Gary Vaynerchuk, Jocko Willink, David Goggins. Like, so her message, I was able to take her message and use it within my silo of being an educator, but also able to make connections to other things I've seen and heard and find that common thread throughout, which is no matter who you are and what position you're in and what kind of life experiences you've had or continue to have, you are going to fall, and you're going to have to decide whether you're getting back up or not. And the way she presented it was just well done. And so I wanted to throw that out there. I really see, for the people who follow me on Twitter, they paid a price there because they probably look at their phone and, you know, maybe they don't follow that many people. And so my name's going to pop up a lot and my stuff's going to pop up a lot. And that could be very annoying for someone. Having said that, though, am I going to stop? No, I'm not going to change my Twitter behavior. So, you know, then that person needs to decide. That's another thing, too, going back to what you were saying. If I find out people unfollow me, I like to think normally it's not a big deal because I've said something or I'm talking about stuff that just doesn't do anything for them. And so, you know, why would they stick around for that?
Can I jump on that for a sec?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's I mean, this whole, I'm backtracking now. That's what made, so part of me looking at the follow unfollow is the fact that I was blocked. And I think that's what my hope was, that what you just said was that the individual that blocked me, that there was something in it that they thought to themselves, well, the stuff that I'm saying is not connecting with them right now. Not connecting with them. You could even think not connecting with them right now. Not useful to them. So my follow unfollow. But, you know, I would add to that is that, well, what if, I mean, the sort of assumption that it's not as, because following is a clickable thing and you can dance in and out of it. It just strikes me as that's a tool. It's a tool for the user. I'm understanding it has an emotional impact now. I get it. And the flagrant use of it, I get it, creates a conversation that you might not be aware of the impact. I get that. But I'm also thinking about the fact that the people, how many things do you put out there that don't get liked or acknowledged at all? And we're used to that. Yet the follow unfollow creates like a deeper dynamic. Like, it means more somehow. For me, if someone chooses to follow or unfollow, like, I honestly don't really notice when, I wouldn't be able to tell you if someone followed or unfollowed me. I know that some did, because when I deleted my account and then came back, there are individuals that have popped up back as, oh, such and such is following you now. I thought to myself, oh, yeah, cool. Like, I sort of think back, I'm like, yeah, that's right. Like, we were part of a PLN before, but the numbers just, anybody that's sort of measuring, anyone that's measuring, it kind of brings in the, you know, sometimes people have those tools that say 15 new followers, 5 unfollows, the likes, those tools. Like, I guess if it's part of your marketing or your business to track that, I can get how it would be more sensitive. But I also go by, but it's the water. Like, you know what? It's like, it's just the water that we're in. This is kind of how this works to a degree. And if someone follows or unfollows, kind of dance with it. But you live tweeting the Brene Brown. Did anyone unfollow you because of it?
I don't know. I'm not notified when I'm unfollowed.
Did you get any new followers?
Maybe. That's it. I mean, I see them, but I can't tell you if that happened, you know, last week when I was doing this or whatever. I did get some comments back about it, which is awesome. Like, Jen Apgar made a comment which led to talk of a Twitter chat that's going to happen this coming week around the Brene Brown Netflix documentary. So there's a group of people who are going to be watching it and then tweeting about it. I think that's awesome. I was like, let me know when it is. I'd love to participate if I can, because I enjoyed the message that came from the documentary, and I think there's a lot there that can be unpacked, and there's a lot there that applies to the work that we do as people and as teachers or educators, I should say. Um, so I mean, that interaction, that back and forth, that was good. I enjoyed that. I'm glad that people jumped in. The follow unfollow thing is, I think, probably the biggest. It's a heavy hitting topic because, like you said, sometimes you tweet things out, nobody likes it, or you get a few likes, and sometimes people respond.
Most times, let's just say that happens most times. If you're an active, I think, sorry, me as an active user, I would go as far as well over 80%, around 80% of what I post doesn't land somewhere. It's still it's floating somewhere out there in the Twitter sphere in cyberspace.
Or it lands and people just don't let you know it landed.
Yeah, yeah. Let's say there's no wraparound. There's no acknowledgement of a thing. So, and that's neither here. It's not a good or a bad thing, but it's just very high percentage of what I post there isn't a piece back for it, and I accept that. I'm like, okay, again, it's just kind of it's the way the tool is used, right?
Right. So that's good for you with you.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
That sounds good.
I know. I mean, probably it's this is the reflecting in public thing. Although I would love to hear, how other people, what's their emotional, what's their sense of their emotion, what's their sense of their emotional connection to how their social medias kind of treat them. Like, and it's not the social medias, it's just the vehicle between people. So it's almost way too easy to sort of, I think an older topic is, is social media a good thing or a bad thing? Like, there's a lot of really simplistic kind of conversations that have happened as a result, I think, of, people developing PLNs and people sort of, is Twitter really worth it? And then you'll see a couple posts about, I'm a brand new user. Can I get some followers, or power users saying you need to follow this person? Like, there's a whole lot of kind of like floaty pieces as to the benefits, pros and cons of using Twitter. One of the conversations that hasn't happened maybe often enough is what is the emotional toll when you're trying to balance that PLN interactivity with digital tools. And what does happen, like, it makes me think of what happens if you're not getting satisfaction from your in real life professional learning network, and then someone says to you, well, you know what, like, get on Twitter and start using it. And then even still there, you're not getting satisfaction, like you're not getting the connection that you had hoped for or expected.
It's interesting that you say that, because I've got a couple of thoughts. The first one is that the emotional toll piece is huge. And I wonder how often, this is the first time kind of it's come to my attention in our conversation that there is an emotional toll. I think it's implicit, but how many times do we make it explicit? For example, my theory. I try to follow a lot of educators because that's the work I do. And I used to, here's the other thing too. It's helped me understand myself better, and it's helped me decide to make decisions about myself, to make decisions about looking in the mirror and acknowledging certain things about myself, positive things and negative things, and then deciding, how do I want to navigate this water, right? So you know that in my Twitter maturity, I was very distraught when I would follow an educator, but they wouldn't follow me back.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, I've loosened up on that. I still have beliefs, but they don't impact me emotionally like they used to. But that's a good thing for me, because there was some growth there for me. And then switching over to, if people in real life aren't able to connect and interact, and someone says, hey, jump on Twitter, there's like millions of people there and you can have some interaction there. I would say, even in that situation, you may have to actually say something to somebody to have them talk to you. And
Specific, specific and
like,
direct. Yeah.
you actually have to like respond to somebody's tweet and say, hey, I read this and I have a question for you, or just, I think it's really cool that you did that, or you said that. Thanks very much. It made my day. Like, you have to do that. And I think, but people are scared to do that. People are scared to do that because then it becomes part of their footprint and they don't like it, or they don't want people to see that, whatever their reasoning is for that. But I think that in that situation, you have to do that. And sometimes you do that and you don't even get a response from the person. So
even when you go direct,
you go 100% direct, you may not get a response. And I had a little bit of that this week. But to me, it's like, okay, they don't want to respond. And I must say that generally speaking, I would say the majority of the time, if somebody says something directly to me, I respond directly to them. But I may decide that there are certain people that may want to talk to me that I'm not going to respond to for a number of different reasons. So it happens. It's like, for me, it's kind of been good professionally and good personally, because it kind of has allowed me to look at certain parts of who I am and how I operate, and then to consider and reflect on those parts and to decide whether I want to act and change something, or whether I just want to consider something mentally and move on. Like, I enjoy that piece of it. I enjoy that. So there's lots of layers there. The thing, what's irking me right now with Twitter is the so-called influencers tweeting constantly about, hey, here's my buddy at Joe Blow or Doe or whatever, and they just jumped onto Twitter and they have no followers, and I'm trying to tell them how awesome it is, so why don't you give them a follow? And I'm like, well, who's Joe Blow? And why isn't Joe Blow saying anything, and then you, the influencer, tweeting that out? Like, it's starting to get on my nerves. Like, and I'll tell you why. If I get on Twitter, it's not about the following and the unfollowing. And it is a little bit, because when you're on Twitter, so I've been on Twitter for years, so I've established like a routine, I've established like some norms, I've established connections. And so if you say to me, Roland, you know what, I really want to get into like makerspace, but I don't know where to start. And I'm on Twitter and I'm like, you know what, go follow this person. They're Canadian, they're constantly tweeting about it. You'll get some ideas, or you'll get some links that'll take you into different places. I think that would be a good start for you. But I don't think I'd ever say connect with this person, they'll hold your hand. No, because that's not how it works. And the whole finding your followers and having people follow you and I have had this conversation. There needs to be some cultivation there. Like, you need to put in the time and the effort to see people, to find people, to follow them. And then you have to put something out, generally speaking, for people to follow you. So for you to go on Twitter and be like, nobody follows me, so I'm just not doing this. Well, are you doing anything, or did you just put your name out there and you just expect people to follow you because your name's there? Now, I do that. So when I'm going through my feed or whatever, and I see somebody's name and I click on I go to their profile, and then I realize, oh, I know this person. I've worked with them, or I've met them at a committee meetings or functions within my school board. I'm the type that will follow them, whether they've said anything or not, just so that like I've connected and they can connect with me or not. But if they do spit something out, I will hope to see it. So this new thing about like so-called, and I'm saying so-called influencers because you can argue whether they are or not, but this business of, hey, my best buddy got on Twitter, you need to follow him. And then you go to Best Buddy's page and Best Buddy's not tweeted anything. So why am I following your best buddy? Like, what I'm helping you demonstrate to the world that you have some influence here. Great, you've got influence. You don't need me to help you make that happen because you've got thousands of followers that will. Like it upsets me because I feel like they're taking the tool and they're using the tool in a way that many people can't use the tool. Right? Like when you have 50,000 followers, it's easy for you to tweet out a message like that. But if you did it with, I don't know, you've got a few hundred, if you do it, you're like, hey, all my followers, Roland just got on Twitter, show him the power of Twitter. Crickets. I think I sent you a direct message yesterday that there was one of these, hey, check this person out. So I checked the person out and the person had nothing there of value. Now I know that's for everybody that's going to look different. But for me, I went and I looked at the tweets and I'm like, well, what's this person trying to tell me? Nothing. So why am I following this person? Like if they're a teacher, you know my theory on that. If they're a teacher, I'll give them a look for sure because they're a fellow educator. But if they're just some person that you met at a workshop and for some reason you connected with them and decided to flex your Twitter muscle and show off, like those are the spaces where I'm really having a hard time. I'm really having a hard time with that. I'm having a hard time with, well, Roland talks about Twitter all the time, but I went on it. It's no big deal. Well, I've been on it for many years and I've taken the time to learn like how it works for me and what I can do with it. And so when I share my journey of Twitter, my journey is one of many years and ups and downs and understanding who I am and what I'm using the tool for and how I can use the tool to benefit me and my students and on I go. But when you're brand new at something, you may not have the fluency, right? And you may not have the desire and you may see one thing and expect it, but not understand what you have to put in to get it out of the tool. And so I'm cautious now. Like when people say, hey, you use Twitter, you talk a lot about it. And I tell them, yeah, because I figured out what works for me and how I use it and how I want to use it. And I do have enough people in my PLN that when I put something out and I ask for feedback or I want a conversation, I think generally I get it. And it might be one or two people, but hey, that's awesome because in those one or two people, I'm going to get something beneficial. And I hope that in my use of Twitter that I do put stuff out that is of value to people so that I'm not constantly asking for things, but I'm also giving things out. And so I think I've really matured in my approach to it and how I talk to people about it. But it's about putting in the time. And I'll give you another example, the 3D printing stuff. People are asking me, well, how do you do this and how do you do that? And they want to go from 0 to 100 instantly. And I'm like, I've been doing this for like 6 years or something like that. And when I started, I knew nothing. And I had to build up my capacity as time went on. And even for me, when I see something really awesome and I reach out to the person, I said, can you tell me about this? I have enough wherewithal to think, okay, this person's been doing this for a long time. They're skilled, they're knowledgeable, they're connected. They've had to go through a lot of, failure to get to where they are. And that's something that I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that. But I think a lot of people aren't. A lot of people see something and they want it now. And they're like, okay, how do I do this now? And then when you tell them, they're like, oh, well, I'm not prepared to do that. I'm not prepared. It's like the leadership and innovation thing that I was part of, the initiative that I was part of. So the formal part of it is over. And unfortunately, I was not able to attend the 2 face-to-face meetings that were had. But I felt like because I wanted to be involved, I did things to show involvement. And what I did was I blogged about my experience of trying to lead innovative activities or ideas at my school. And this one part of it is about a teacher that initially I spoke to that was very interested, but never got on board. And it's funny because my evolution throughout the process was, at the beginning I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna talk to this teacher and I'm gonna, share some stuff and get them pumped up. And then as time went on, I shifted from, okay, I'm gonna really support this person to, you know what, I've decided to just leave this person alone because there's only so much door knocking I can do before I decide this person's not interested. And so it ended with I was able to get some staff members on board, which was awesome. But there was a couple that said they were interested that still kind of talk about it here and there, but show no action. And so I moved on from them. And it's funny that I'm talking about this today because just the other day, that one person approached me and said, hey, that 3D printing thing, can we still, go down that road? And I had to laugh because I'm like, yeah, of course. I mean, I'm not knocking on your door anymore. I did that. You said yes. I tried 2 or 3 times, and then it feels weird for me. It feels like I'm in your face. It feels like I'm pushing something. I'm selling something you don't want to buy. And I'm not interested in doing that. So I back right off. But this person has an idea. And so I took the first step or the second step in the process. And now we'll see if anything comes of that. I don't think anything's going to come of it just because of the track record. But, people can change, times change, things shift. I get it. So now when people talk to me about social media, it's like I have to make it clear and I have to be transparent about my journey, where I started, what some of my failures were, what some of my successes were, what I'm doing with it today, and how it's working for me now. That makes me think that it's a valuable tool. But for newbies, when who do you follow? Is anybody going to follow you back? That all depends on what your flavor is. Are you going to put yourself out there, or are you just going to sit and watch or creep? And if that's your purpose, that's great. But don't expect people to follow you and try to interact with you when you're not putting yourself out there. And sometimes you are going to put yourself out there. You're the classic. Your situation. I love your situation in a way because you were onto it, into it, doing all kinds of things with it. And as you evolved, you're like, yeah, I don't want this to be part of my life anymore. I'm not. There's a void, and it's not filling the void, so it's got to go. And you let it go.
I like that. Sorry, and just to jump on the void, I think it's funny the way that I'm starting to look at. So actually, I got to back up. So your whole conversation about jumping in there and doing something, Brene would be proud to hear you say that, because I think that was part of what she was talking about in the special as well. Is that to go out there, to be brave and to be vulnerable reaps rewards, and in the least it reaps real-time data as to whether or not you're on track. To sort of sit back and not do something becomes paralyzing to a degree. So I would agree that going out there and taking the risk to grow something, to share something, to do something are all the sort of active tools of testing your own bravery and vulnerability. The second part, when you talk about the void, I think at one point, I'm trying to think of my own sort of arc again as far as what social media, probably when I started to use it, it wasn't about the void, it was about the curiosity about what this thing was. And then at some point, I think it shifted to maybe a void. Like some of the things that I found that were curious made me think that there was a void. Like there was something actually missing around me, and I needed to pursue the use of a social media in order to notice it, to affirm myself, to learn a little something. Like it's just too complex, but it was sort of like I convinced myself through social media that there were things on social media that were more accessible, interesting, and valuable than what was in front of me. My wall that I hit was the, in some ways, catastrophic realization that everything that I was looking for online, the pursuit of looking for the things online, was no longer speaking to what my needs were. It was speaking to deficits and scarcity. Like I didn't feel like I was walking into using social media with a positive mindset. I was seeking the positive mindset from using social media. And that collapsed a lot of things in on me. And I started to realize I need to take time away from it again to reassess the relationship, because I felt like I was giving more than receiving, and just the expectation that I should receive more, I think is where I got to this conflict part, because the truth of it is I was connected with so many people in my version of social media that were just numbers to me. Like I didn't feel like there was a relationship there by what I was doing, by what they were doing, by what the actual tool was bringing to me. So it was not, when I hit a spot, it wasn't as simple as saying the void that was being filled. It really did come down to the relationship that I felt like I had with the people through this tool. And around that time, you and I had conversations about the shift in our podcasting, and that was speaking to me wanting to have something that was more intimate, more on point, more sort of like connected. And that was something that kind of started to get me thinking about using social media in a different way. If I go back to, I want to go back to when you're mentioning about, sometimes the power users that are promoting someone that isn't actively using. My problem with that is where I landed, is that I think that if you are saying, please follow this person, because, and it's not like you gotta know that if you don't, you still gotta know that if you have 1,000, 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 followers, and you put out a "you should" statement, people are going to comply. And in doing so, I wonder about the responsibility that you bear for doing that, and whether or not you feel like you are building a relationship or, again, moving numbers around. And my problem with it, and it's a little bit like what you're saying about having to be brave and build the connections online, is that also can put you in a silo if you choose to, like the person that's saying, yeah, I'll take 200-300 followers just like that. Yesterday, I joined Twitter. Now I've got 1,000 followers. I think that the important conversation that has to come out of that, when a power user promotes a brand new user, it's almost like there needs to be some sort of sidebar conversation that says, look, you just gathered 1,000 followers, but they're there because of me, not you. Now you have to make a choice. Are you now going to establish yourself? Or are you hoping to sort of like, are you actually hoping to gain something from this move? And that's just like the coach's corner thing. If I can remember if someone, you coach a team, a high school team, there have been times where I've benched players because they weren't there for the practice time. And the way I kind of looked at that is that they weren't there to develop the skill that would say, they don't get to tell me, yeah, don't worry, coach, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. No, you have to be there to sort of demonstrate the practice time so that when game time comes, you're good to go. And the kids don't always, actually no kid ever really liked that. But, part of it is, it was my way of justifying that you have to develop your skill before I'm not going to just take your word for it. You have to do something. And I wonder about these power users, whether or not they're nurturing a coaching relationship with some of the individuals that they're just blasting out there into cyberspace. And then this person gets out there and they have 1,000 followers and they still don't know what to do. So when someone blasts out and says, yeah, show them the power of the internet fire hose doesn't help someone use the internet. It's a roller coaster. You get to do the Yukon Striker, that sort of whatever it is drop, but you get all the thrill and none of the actual skill. And that's my sort of thing that I wonder about. I think that what I would be doing, I think it also kind of tells the new user that other people can do stuff for you that you don't have to do for yourself. But different story. I think what would be far better is that for that person that's a power user to subtly in the background lift that person up and say, here's what you do. Here's some little secrets that I've learned. Give it a try yourself. instead of me saying the thing, how about you post the thing, tag me in it that you appreciate some of the help. It's a very subtle change that you appreciate the help. You would love to sort of pick up, here's some things of interest. I'm looking for, as you said, coding. I'm looking for, maker spaces. And I really love, I don't know, ASD programming. And I appreciate such and such a person for telling me this is how you do it. I've tagged them here with a thank you. And I've yet to really see that. And I think I would appreciate those types of lessons better, because I think it does train us in a way of building more authentic connections through these social media promotion kind of power user links. I know why people do it, because they're looking to promote their own brand. I get it. Another conversation as well. But I would rather see those types of connections. I'm going to tell you how to do it for yourself.
Well, here's the other thing too. Rather than say, hey, let's show people the power of Twitter and tell me where you are and what you do, do this. Hey, what are you interested in? Buddy tells you what they're interested in. Watch this. And you tweet out, hey, I've got a buddy who doesn't understand how Twitter works. Here's his question. He's interested in such and such. What kind of write back and let us know what you think, or where he can go, or what book you've read. And then you actually get something useful. You have people responding saying, oh, if your buddy's interested in coding, he should definitely check out this book or this website or this person on Twitter, and they'll help you out, or you'll get more information.
Yep.
But here's the other problem with that. That experiment with someone who has 100,000 followers, the results are going to be a lot different than someone like me who has 4,500 followers.
Or me who has 450, right?
There you go. Now, it might be funny in that someone like you might have more of an intimate back and forth with people, because you don't have a ton of people, but I'm just saying it's possible that you could have 4 or 5 dedicated followers who will engage with you on a number of things, not just this. Whereas the 100,000 follower person is there's a reason why they have 100,000 followers, because they're selling something, or they are someone who are in a position of some kind of influence because of something they've done or something they've created, whatever.
Do you think anyone that has something like 100,000 followers is just a conversation? Do you think there's anyone that's just a conversationalist on any social media platform that has 100K followers? Or do you think they you show me someone that has 10,000K plus followers and they have a side hustle? Do you think it's necessarily connected?
I can't. When you say that, I can't think of anybody I know that has 10,000K followers and hasn't written a book or done keynotes or created something within a niche.
So some side hustle, some sort of a side hustle.
But I would define side hustle loosely, probably, compared to, because side hustle could be doing keynotes. No, I don't know.
Let's say other than being a classroom teacher, if we're just using, and I don't mean other, but
you and I know someone who's got 7,000 plus followers that hasn't written a book, that doesn't do keynotes, and started on Twitter quite recently. So now how that's happened, I'm still trying to investigate that. In terms of my own brain, how does that work? How does someone
cross promotion?
Yes, definitely cross promotion and
friends with deals.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting about that it's funny too, because if you've been around for a while in this Twitter sphere, and specifically in the educational sector of it, it's funny that when particular people push a message out, it's funny to see who they tag.
Yeah.
And you and I have gone over this. I saw somebody tweet something out and they tagged 7 heavy hitters.
We see you.
Two of those 7 heavy hitters, have published books or are in the business of publishing books. And so you get a flavor. But how one goes from being on Twitter for 6 months and 7,000 plus followers, I mean, you just look at their feed and you see what they're pushing out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it, they're not only pushing out their message, they're pushing out their look, because they may have a certain look. They're using their God-given looks to help them sell and push their message. And you're right, there's cross promotion. They're doing different things. They're using different strategies. Are they moral and ethical? That's a whole other conversation. But again, the end user has to know. So you and I know. We figured it out pretty quick. And it's funny because now with the mute button thing, I'm going to be muting some people today because I'm not ready to sever the following, because there are some things that they've said and they are connected in a way that it's advantageous to me and my learning, but I don't need to read 15 of their tweets every day anymore. I don't need that.
The other thing that I've discovered, and maybe you've done this too, is that, part of me doing the unfollow before I knew the mute, before I sort of even realized the mute, was the fact that a lot of these individuals, the people that were sort of populating okay, so here was what was interesting about me doing the follow unfollow, is that you get a sense of your own silo. And what I mean by that is I became kind of desensitized to some of the single voices in my PLN, the people that are constantly posting and that I would constantly notice and that I would see as being the anchors to other conversations, as in I had to go through them in order to find other interesting people, which is valuable sometimes. But if you have to make it through advertisement and brand post in order to get to the comments line, like you had to go through that first, that's where I got fatigued. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to unfollow. In unfollowing, in some ways in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm no longer getting a direct feed, but now I get their indirect feed. And by getting their indirect feed, when they still pop up, you get a measure of, you get sort of like this health measure or diversity measure of your PLN and who's still considered to be the important players to your people, not necessarily to you. Because if you decide to unfollow, then you're kind of saying, well, I'm not going to follow this anymore. So then it gives you a real sort of weird sense of I'm still in my silo. Like it's like science fiction. I can't escape this person unless I block them. And because other people are going to tweet and retweet. And for me, that's where it starts to become, I need to shift. I need to shift quite drastically here. Because if I were to try testing that in a bulk of the power posters in my feed, I'm going to guess that they would still pop up every single day as retweets and reposts from other people. And then I have to decide whether or not I want to see them in that light too. Do I want them taking up space in there? And where I kind of bring this back to is an economy of time. So back to that encyclopedias on a shelf, if I'm going to the encyclopedia that has the letter E on it, I don't necessarily want, and I'm going there with a specific intent to find an idea or a definition, I don't need something that's falling under the letter T clouding that. I want to be able to get in, get out, get my information. And I think that's again, if I go efficiency of time and where I would prefer to spend my time. And also realizing too, I am a, let's say, victim or user or demographic. If I think of social media as a marketing thing, I fall prey to the tools as well. I do. I am entirely, social media knows how to get my attention and hold my attention. So what I can do is what are my tools to counteract that? So those power users that are in there, it's really difficult to escape them. Really difficult.
I agree. And you made a good point about the fact that you can see, based on your followers, how much impact those power players have. Because I recently unfollowed a couple of people, like power players, because I was like, I'm just tired of the brand. I'm just tired. I don't want to directly have those messages come my way. And they're still popping up like crazy. And it's funny because then I'm looking at the person who's popping it up, the person who's liking it or the person who's retweeting it, I'm being notified. And I'm just shaking my head like, well, I guess, like I'm not willing to part ways with the person who liked it. They're liking it, right? But it's interesting. The more time you spend on it, the more you realize certain things about it. But still, at the end of the day, there's the focus. What's your focus? What are you here for? Because there is a lot of noise. And, I've become aware. I'm taking an AQ course, and I've become aware of my procrastination and, how it's been kind of been oozing its way out of me and into the world. And it's that refocus. I got to shift. I have to honestly ask myself what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And then when I do that, I'm usually okay. But it's crazy. The whole thing's crazy. I just keep going back to what's your intention? How much time are you willing to put into it? Because that's important.
Would you ever, so you've been a guy that's done the professional development presentations on the use of Twitter, correct?
Yes.
Would you ever do those presentations now?
I guess it depends.
Have you looked at your old notes on that? Like the stuff that you were saying, your message that you were sending. I'm curious as to whether or not your message would be any different.
My message, I have looked back on that, and I've talked to one of my buddies that in the beginning, there were 3 of us who did the presentation. Then it turned into just the 2 of us doing the presentation. And we've both talked about it. And we've talked about how, like, the last time we tried to do the presentation, like 2 or 3 people signed up for it. And so we looked at each other and we thought, okay, this train, like, is gone. Okay. People either are going to figure it out on their own, or they're just not interested, that's totally cool. Because I think we did it 3 or 4 years, or attempted to do it 3 or 4 years in a row. And the first year we got a lot of play. In the second year we got some, and then the third year really died down. In the fourth year there was nothing. Nobody wanted it. And it does force you to look back on the message you're providing. Would I change anything? It was a very basic. It was like, here's Twitter. This is how you sign up. These are some tips and tricks. But I think what I would do differently is I would really be laser focused on what this tool can do for you as an educator, but more importantly, what you can do with it. Mm-hmm. Because the thing is, in my opinion, Twitter offers me a lot, but again, I've spent a lot of time on it, and I've made some connections with some people, enough people to make it worth my while. And so for a new person to jump on and to think that they're going to have those connections is 100% incorrect. They're not. You have to put in the time and the work to make that happen. And so then the focus has to be more on what can you do with it. And so then the conversation shifts, right? It shifts to, well, this is what I do with it as a classroom teacher, because my class account, I use it differently than my personal account. Very different. My class account is meant to push things out and to possibly make connections with people, and then to collaborate with those people, because it's not about myself and the other adult. It's about the students and how to roll them into like the learning that can come from the collaboration and the communication. That's a completely different topic. And so that would be, I would probably spend 80% on that, and then 20% on, okay, if you want to take this and use it and have it work for you, this is kind of like my pathway, and these are some things you can do, but it's going to take a lot more effort and time than how you can use it as a classroom teacher with your class to help them learn what this tool is about and how to push things out to be able to collaborate and communicate. Two whole different presentations, really. The first year it was more like, there was definitely an evolution to this too, right? Because there was 3 of us, and it was awesome because at the time, if you looked at the 3 of us, all 3 of us used it in a different way.
Yep.
we were all educators, all using it to help us with our profession, but we all used it in a different way, and that was great for people to see. Um, that's what I would do today. Can I drop one more topic before we shut this down?
Do it.
Twitter chats. So this is one thing that recently I've benefited from big time with Twitter, and I'll tell you how it plays out. So on Twitter, there are chats. People put together like book study groups, or they will run a chat about a particular topic, and what they do is they come up with a bunch of questions, and then typically, they'll advertise. They'll say, okay, on like Tuesday night at 9 p.m. until 10 p.m. there's going to be a chat about, we're really picking on coding today, but coding in the classroom, and here's the hashtag. So at 9 o'clock on Tuesday, use this hashtag and come on over, and it'll be a guided chat about this topic. And I love Twitter chats because they provide me with time to reflect on what I've done, what I do, and what I would like to do with my class. And it gives me an opportunity to think about a particular topic and mull it over. And, so there's levels here. The first level is I go, and it allows me to learn more about a particular topic. The second level is it allows me to reflect on my practice. The third level is that I could possibly make new connections for my professional learning network, or to jump into somebody else's professional learning network. Okay, so right there's like 3 quick levels for me in a Twitter chat. And then the other level is that it's done on my time. So I can go in there at 8 and I can answer questions that I feel like I can, and I can ignore questions that I don't want to answer, and whatever. So lately I found myself, like, the TV will be on, and like I said, I've been procrastinating. So what I'll do is I'll go on Twitter and I'll just scroll through my feed, and I'll see a hashtag for a chat, and then I'll see somebody answering the question or someone pushing the question out. And if it catches my eye, I jump in. I've been loving it lately. So that's a huge, those Twitter chats are such a gold nugget. Now people might say, well, okay, how do I get into that? Right? Well, there's a formula on how to find them and get into them. But lately, that's been a huge nugget for me. But my purpose, aside from procrastinating, has been to actually think about the work I'm doing, and to gather data and information about what other people do and what works for them, and how it could possibly help me and to help my students with their learning. So I just wanted to throw that out there, gold nugget. And I've been lucky lately. I've won some things. Like I won a book. I won a free online course just from participating and then being randomly chosen as a participant in the chat. The Brene Brown thing is happening, and the only reason I know about it is because I was tweeting about it, and then one comment led to another to, hey, on this night I just retweeted it. On this night, there's a bunch of us that are going to watch it, and then from this time to this time, we're going to talk about it. I'm like, right on. That's awesome, because I'd like to involve myself in that. Now, the beautiful thing about that is that I could jump on and I could answer the first question or respond to somebody's response or somebody's question. And then, my kids might need me. So I put my phone down and I go and be dad for whatever time, and then come back, pick it up, and keep going. Like, just because it's happening live within a particular time doesn't mean I can't revisit the hashtag that was used for the chat, where I can still read people's responses. I can still comment on things that were said. It's like these things that live in time and tend to not go away can be used to your advantage. So even in that situation, Twitter can be very powerful, because you can have these conversations and you can engage yourself in reflective practice without having to leave your home, or to be somewhere out in the world and be able to do it using your mobile device at that particular time. I just wanted to throw that out there. I've been really enjoying Twitter chats lately, and I've been loving entering in. I see the first and second question. I'm like, this doesn't speak to me at all. And then I leave because there's nothing there for me. I love that. I love that I can do that. I can have PD in my pocket. As Brian Aspinall said in a tweet yesterday, PD in his pocket is his cell phone and his connection to Twitter. And that can be used anytime, anywhere, as long as you're connected.
I'm not a fan of Twitter chats. Just
why?
Well, so what you've kind of let's say what's been reignited for you or ignited on fire for you about Twitter chats, I've been really appreciating the PLN DMs. So using direct messaging to have deeper conversations. So, and a lot fewer, because I can't manage the broadness of those conversations and get to the information that's interesting to me. So I've been sort of really working hard to cultivate deeper conversations with people on the DM, and get to know once. So it is about getting to know the things, that topics of interest on, let's say, social media. But then what I'm really craving is getting to know the individuals that are posting them. So if it's friending, it's friending 101, getting to know people, and looking to cultivate something that when I look at my digital PLN, am I working to build something that feels like a truer IRL friendship? So I currently have several conversations that are going on where I don't have the person's mobile number. So we're having conversations in the DM that I feel like I'm growing to be a better friend, a better person through those conversations. I'm taking what you and I have established and test driving it in a broader context, because you and I ostensibly met on the internet. Like, that's how we started to become friends. And now there is a in real life component, the hanging out and going for food. So we've found things beyond the classroom. This podcast is a good example of that, but found things beyond the classroom that kind of unite us. And I'm working there to build those connections. The Twitter chat for me, I think it has a lot to do with how I process and play with information. I am a stronger listener than I am a speaker. Like that, in being able to articulate my thoughts. Like I spend a lot of time honing my active listening skills and finding ways to engage my active listening skills with others. So it's not just I'm sort of doing ways to organize my thinking. It's also, how do I reach out and connect my thinking with somebody else and still kind of keep things moving along? I find Twitter chats for me are completely unwieldy. I would rather be in that room with those 100 people listening to that conversation than to have it come by in a single stream and not get the diversity of voices. How do I sort of put this? I really value being able to echolocate points of interest. I think about this. I'm going to go really, really wide. Do you remember back in the day we were talking about, I think it was partially something that came out of our Empathy Engines conversation. And I had mentioned to you about a tech that was developed. I think I did this. I don't know what episode. A tech that was developed where someone thought to themselves, they were at some sort of convention where there were people doing a lot of sign language and also using devices that had the digital voice capacity, so text to voice. And this person was walking through that space and hearing so many voices that were in the same tone, same monotone, or within a very narrow band. And what this individual connected was, is this really representative of the character of the person? Or are they compromising their voice, their true voice, in that space? So she embarked on this project to get voice donors and to collect sounds from individuals that are capable of making sounds, harmonize those two things together, and then put that back into their devices. So when their device said, "I would love to podcast with you today," it was in a tonal range that sounded like their voice. And their parents were blown away. The people that knew them and knew some of the sounds they could make, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I always wondered what this child's voice could sound like." I think about that in my context when several of the students are saying things and using their device. And sometimes positionally, because I know where they're sitting, I know who it came from if I've turned my back or I looked in the other direction. But the other thing in that sort of soundscape of a classroom, I realized how important it is for me to be able to authenticate who is saying what, and the why, and the how, and the emotion, and the context. And Twitter chats strip me of all of that. All of that. All it is to me, a Twitter chat, is an information feed that I feel like I can't connect to in a way that's important to me. So I've completely, it's interesting, one of those conversations that I think you were a part of, I thought to myself, you know what? Twitter chat, that's not for me. And I probably won't check in. I might come across it later. And I pull up the hashtags later and I'll kind of cherry pick and peek at it. But to participate, I feel like I can't bring out the best of me. I can't participate in a way that's useful to me. And again, I would say I would rather be inside that real room and have all those different discussions going on, and then to decide who it is I'd like to go over and sit down beside and talk to, and then think to myself, oh, I just heard something. Can I check back in with you later? And then go back over to the other thing and sort of, but I'm still in the space. I'm still hearing all this energy and this kind of the dynamicism of those conversations. I like that more. Controlled anarchy, orchestrated, random, whatever you want to call it. So
that's awesome. I appreciate your perspective. Like, I'm 100% opposed to what you're saying, but I get, but you said it when you talked about how, like, it meets your need.
Yeah.
I don't want DMs back and forth with people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
you and I are niched very differently. Yeah. But here's the whack part. Here's the whack part. When you and I are together, we're both repping our different styles, and it works. That's like the ninja level of this, right? Like, it's funny. Like, it's kind of remarkable, that whole, how we bring those tools together, and yet we still put this cast together. You know what I mean? Like, we are on opposite ends of our usage, but it's kind of, I think it's working well. I'll say it, it's working well. I love having these conversations with you, and I love that you say that you're opposed to me too, because I kind of go, good, it's working for you, fantastic.
Exactly. That's, again, bottom line. We have needs, and we're finding ways to meet them. Mm-hmm. Listening to you talk, it kills me listening to you say, how you rather go deep in the DMs. I'm like, no, don't DM me. I don't want to do that. I'd rather just be on the outside looking in and jumping in where I want to jump in.
Yeah, that's what you and I do, but it's in a different frame. Right. And in the same way,
but we're also friends now. So
agreed. No. And that's what I'm pointing out. But that's and so I'll flip it the other way. You like that loud room. You'll just do it on here. Like, we're both existing in the same space. But as you said, according to the need, like, for you to be able to sort of come in and look at that loud space, that loud room. And I know I'm using like an external measurement, but that's what it is. Like, a Twitter, it doesn't feel loud to me when I'm in an actual room with a lot of people talking. I'm good. I love it. It feels loud to me when I'm looking at a Twitter chat. I'm like, oh, and I'm having to thumb scroll. And every time I thumb scroll, I can't see what I'm looking at. It disconnects me. Right. And I think you dig that. Like, I truly believe it's your space.
It just brings back memories of when we first met in real life, which was just hilarious.
Yeah.
That was fun. That was a great context. So, see, being in that room, that was a good room to be in for me. But dude, I'm not interested in going and sitting somewhere, and I'm just not. I'm not. My life doesn't. I'm not built for that right now. And so, but it's cool. Like, it's cool. I'm glad you and I found common ground, this podcast, to be able to do this. And yeah, it's good times. It's just funny because I can imagine okay, Roland, I'm going to this conference or whatever. Okay, have fun, Chris. And then while you're in the room in real life doing your thing, you're gonna
want a podcast.
No. Or I mean, it's just like, you're there in real life and I'll be on it here.
Yeah.
So, and then there's the back channel where you and I are probably texting each other about,
exactly.
Hey, did you just see that or just hear that? And so, yeah, it works. Well, I didn't know that this podcast would turn into a talk about social media and Twitter again, but it did. But I mean, it's good stuff, and I think that it's good to hash it out and to talk about it. And really, for this week, I really wanted to hit on Twitter chats. I wanted to talk about that, so I'm glad we got to do that.
And I love that I made a mistake and it kind of came out. And I wish, I don't know if anyone watches the video. Like I don't know if I actually had a moment of a holy crap moment, kind of looking up at the camera. Don't know if I did that, to be honest, but I will say flat out, I was flat out to the individuals that I've followed and unfollowed and potentially created, some confusion on your end, some emotional dissonance on your end. I may still unfollow, but I'll probably use mute as well. And I wish you knew. I wish some of the individuals knew. And eventually I might get to the space where I can be brave enough to say why I'm muting. I'm about to mute this conversation. Maybe I should try that just in some other conversations before I hit the mute, because other people have called me on that before. Most specifically, I had a principal talking about me walking away from a committee and asking, is your committee ready for you to walk away? And not that not that I'm saying some, super sort of like commitment to making sure that everyone's good with it, but is it important to declare why you're walking away? So maybe I'll find the bravery to be able to say, I'm going to mute this conversation for now. Thanks. It was cool, but it's too much. I got to go. I'll check back in with you later. But again, yeah, I'll start using mute more often now. Using it. What did I watch last night? Have you watched The Giver? You know that story,
No.
The Giver?
I know the story, but I've not seen it.
So the family, so like that precision of language, which is like, completely neutralizing the emotional color of it. Don't euphemize, don't inference, say exactly what you're thinking so that people can be clear. They don't have to feel anything. They can just understand what you're saying. So precision of Twitter use, just precision of social media. Can I drop a crazy that we won't get back to today, but I really wanted to. Maybe you and I can chat this one out during the week.
Mm-hmm.
How you deal with your kids, your own children, having bad behavior at school as a teacher. So what that creates in your sort of thinking, in your how you sort of work them through it, what kind of tools you use to kind of either discipline or not discipline them, how to measure whether or not the school did a good job of bringing it back around so that your child feels restored and reconnected and they might not do it again. Because yeah, I may have stories to share. It might just be more of a philosophical thing, but had some stuff pop up this week that I'll share with you offline, and maybe it can fuel how we do this. Because I think that's I think today we spent more time kind of inside the school and not as much in our sort of family, the dad side. So this is where I'm seeing my dad side and teacher side, not in a disagreement, but I don't find harmony between the two. I have to kind of decide which one I'm going to be. I don't know if either one is kind of helping it. So it's where you feel like you're kind of pulled apart, one of those moments. And yeah, my kids had some behaviors this week at school that challenged me to what hat I was going to wear. I think I fell on the dad side. Hope I fell on the dad side. I guess I could ask them. Yeah, but that's observe your thinking this week. And we'll maybe we can come back to that at some point. But either way, I'll share with you what happened.
Sounds good.
Sorry, folks, you don't get this one. This is the off ramp. This will be the off ramp stuff.
You're gonna show us the sketch note?
Yeah. Oh, and let's also plug. So next Sunday.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I believe so. So next Sunday, we're going to be rocking the Mad PD. We're going to be rocking the Mad PD, 8 a.m. So it's hashtag Mad PD. That little project that got rolling by Mr. Cameron and Mr. Rodenizer. Accelerated, is voice ed connected somehow? I don't know.
I'm sure.
And a couple hundred presenters. Is it all?
And we're gonna be talking about reflective practice.
Yeah, we'll reveal behind the curtain a little bit how we do. It's going to be another decoded conversation, but yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that.
Right on. Thanks, Chris.
Hashtag MadPD. You too, sir. Chat you soon.
Have a good week.
You too.